Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
It's lights out and away we go. Alberto's got away beautifully at the start of the great race. Who's that got off?
Leclerc. It's Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc.
Welcome to another instalment of Negative Camber, the Motorsport Show, proudly brought to you by Pro Karts Race Centre. Today we meet Australian karting prodigy Sebastian Eskandari-Marandi. We meet his family, learn about his short career in Australian karting, discover how he gained the opportunity to become part of the factory Tony Kart team, and dissect the cultural and performance differences in World Championship karting. So strap yourselves in, make yourselves comfortable, and enjoy the latest episode of Negative Camber, the Motorsport Show, proudly brought to you by Pro Karts Race Centre. Welcome to Negative Camber, the Motorsport Show.
Far enough back, he's going to make the lunge down the inside.
The ultimate pit stop.
The safety car is coming in.
Fueling your passion for motorsport.
With an emotional moment that means everything.
All of the latest results, analysis, and interviews.
Roar the drivers on to the final lap of this race.
I'm Jamie Lemura, motorsport enthusiast, historian, and media presenter.
And I'm Lee Harrison, motorsport professional, Sprintmaster Australia race driver, and Formula One alumni.
Welcome to Negative Camber, the Motorsport Show, and really honoured to have young gun Sebastian Eskandari-Marandi on the show, and his family as well. So Kelly, his mum, and obviously Babak, his father as well. So welcome to the show, to all three of you. It's a pleasure and an honour to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, Seb, I'll start first and foremost. Firstly, congratulations on sort of making the trek and the adventure to overseas and really starting to, I guess, carve your career out in motorsport and wherever that takes you. Tell us, I guess, what was the steps and the process in getting to Italy and racing for the Tony Kart team?
Well, the steps to getting there was
Just when you started karting first?
when I started karting, I would always go out to the track with Dad, and we'll just keep practicing laps and laps and testing different things to try and go faster. And then when we did AKC at Newcastle at the end of 2020, it was Mum's birthday, and I promised I would bring her home the winning trophy and get pole, and I did that. And I said, that's the best birthday present. And then we did AKC in 2021 and 2022. And the key thing just for that was to keep trying to perform and get better every time. And that's how I got to Italy.
Amazing. And so did Tony Kart approach you directly, or did you go through a process where you sent like a resume or a CV or something like that?
That would be for Dad to explain.
So on the back of sort of Seb in 21 when he won the Cadet 9 AKC, he was 8 years old at the stage, and he was a young at that point. And when he won that championship, we put a request into Karting Australia to maybe move him up to the Cadet 12, which at the time was the age of 10 to 12. Mm-hmm. At this stage, he started the Cadet 12 year, he was still 8. And so he won the Cadet 12 championship. And then on the back of that, winning the Cadet 12 AKC championship, they got an entry into the Rock Cup in Italy as the Rock Cup super final. So and when we went to that, we decided to do the race weekend before it, which they recommended because it was sort of you learn the track, you learn the karts and engines. And so the first race he did then, he got pole and he won some heats, and the final result wasn't the best. So I think we got 6th or 5th or something.
It was the pre-final. The pre-final was actually third, but the final was 6th because I got hit up in the last corner.
Yeah, that's right. And then just through that process, and I guess even before that, we had some friends here who have connections to Tony Kart, and Tony Kart previously had contacted them and asked them if they knew of any drivers that were up and coming. And so they suggested they keep an eye on Seb. And so through that process, we got talking to them, and we did some testing after the Rock Cup. And we did 2 days of testing, and then after that, they invited us back to the factory and proposed that they'd want him for the following year.
Wow. So clearly it made a really good impression to those that matter most, I guess. So are they now are they linked to Ferrari or a major Formula One team?
So Tony Kart is actually sponsored by the Ferrari Driver Academy. And,
wow. Okay.
And every year with the Ferrari Driver Academy in Italy, Tony Kart put 1 or 2 drivers in for that. We've been this year when you were testing at Francoforte, we had Carlos Sainz out there testing.
Wow.
And at the actual race, the Ferrari Driver Academy manager and one of the other people.
Yeah, so I can't remember his name. So the Ferrari Driver Academy manager and also the gentleman who was the head of Motorsport at Ferrari. At the race, and we met them and had a chat to them, and they watched Seb drive a little bit. And it's interesting, actually, in the contract that you sign with Tony Kart, there's a point that says that if the Ferrari Driver Academy want you to sign up, then you have to sign up. So
that's amazing. Like, and I mean, there's people that are part of the Driver Academy that don't even get that opportunity, or even considered. Like at the moment, for the Australasia side of things, they've just announced a trial of all of the Australasian young drivers to have a crack at it, and they're monitoring you closer than what those drivers are going to be assessed, because they only get 3 or 4 days. It's almost like SAS, like you go through all these different trials and tests, and then you make the cut, bang, that's it. Whereas in this case, they'll be able to see you pretty much from your younger stage, and to develop and refine it and go from there. So it's an amazing opportunity. Now, both of you, in terms of the parents now, you're both from the medical profession, but from my understanding, no motorsport background whatsoever. So this is quite a unique situation.
It is, and it was quite funny because we were at the Rock Cup and we were in the Polish Paralympic team. And the funny thing is that they all come from motorsport. You got this guy, his dad's a rally driver. That one is a rally driver and is the FIA delegate for Poland for motorsport. And then you got this other guy who races GT cars, and this one races endurance cars. And their first thing to us was, so who teaches Seb? We said, what's your motorsport background? And we're like, well, we don't have one. We just sort of I don't know.
YouTube
it. But did you have any so no one in either side of the family tree has not even, were there any car fans or anything of that nature?
We are rev heads. Yeah. We've had we like our cars. We like fast cars. And I guess that's where his initial interest came. He loved cars at the beginning. And that's how it all came.
They're the rev heads. I'm the rev up.
No, that's good.
Yeah. So, but it's I've always loved cars and loved racing. I've been a big motorsport fan. I used to love Mark Webber. Stay up and watch him race, and I used to love the V8s and stuff like that. So I guess that's where the interest sort of comes into it. I guess having a medical background, we're very meticulous in there's a process of doing things. Yeah. Even for us, like because he started when he was 4, and I guess we've always been quite lucky in that when he was 4 and he wanted to do it, there was an opportunity and a racetrack that he could go and do it at. And through that process, we met a couple of people who were really helpful. We've met a lot of people who haven't been helpful and try to put up a lot of roadblocks and hurdles. Yeah, we've met a few along the way that have been really helpful, and they've been part of our lives since day one with all this journey. So
yeah. Do you mind if I ask, before I jump over to Kelly? I mean, what sort of part of the medical profession? What do you specialise in?
So I'm a sports doctor. I did a master's in sports medicine. So my actual special interest is sports performance through nutrition, training, and sports psychology. And I guess that's why it's lucky, because from day one I've been drip feeding him. But I think also he's actually a very good swimmer too. And we've asked him along the line, down through the sort of process, as to whether he wanted to do swimming instead of go-karting, because we're best country, best state for swimming. But So sports medicine and sports performance, I guess that's probably what helps him and us, because we kind of have an idea and we have a process of how we feel or think things need to be done.
Yep. So you'd almost become, would it be crazy to assume that you'd be Seb's almost like his personal trainer, so you could almost tailor an exercise program to have his muscle strengthened, or cardiovascular system and that type of thing as well?
Yeah, that's what we focus on. We try to do it and keep it fun. And that's what we try to do, sort of with his sort of limitations of his age and his size and things like that, and not to overdo it. And he says that his endpoint is X, and so we break it down into lots of small goals, and we know where we want to be in 5-6 years, and so we work towards that. Yeah,
fair enough. And I mean, hey, Seb, swimmer, that's not so bad. It's a life skill. At least you know you're going to be okay in water, so that's the main thing. That's what I tell my kids anyway.
So, it's it's interesting. So. Yeah.
Kelly, yourself, you're medical profession as well?
Yeah, I'm a registered nurse, and I was working in the operating theatres. But now I'm Seb's traveller. I'm the trainer now because my wife is at home. And so
teacher?
Yeah, I'm the teacher, the transporter, the personal trainer, everything. So
yeah. I mean, so in regards to that, I mean, to literally put your career on hold and to make that transition to Italy, how have you found it? What's been some of the things that you've liked, and what are some of the challenges that you've faced?
Yeah, it is challenging because, you've had your own identity and work start, other contact and such, whereas now it's just Seb and I. And so becoming a teacher overnight's been hard, but Seb is a good student, so he's pretty clever. So I'm pretty lucky. And but the language barriers have been hard, and yes, it can be a bit challenging in Italy, of course, but because of the language barrier, I think, but we're managing, we're going okay.
And as you can appreciate, Italians are very passionate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What they say is a swearing.
Yeah. Look, if ever you need a translator, I'm more than happy to help. So,
that's sort of
just having to watch and you're not being able to say too much and things like that.
Yeah. Actually, in Italy, it's English is now becoming a bit more of an adopted language. In many cases, they're actually throwing it out to all of their schools there as like a primary language to learn. Within the team itself, how you're communicating with the team, is it broken English? Is it in English, or are you learning Italian to communicate?
Well,
you are learning a bit Italian.
I'm learning a bit Italian, but the English that they speak is very broken, and most of the words that I say they don't understand.
Yeah.
Google Translate a fair bit.
Yep. No, that's fair enough.
It's very good English, and he translates a lot, and then sends feedback whenever it gets passed across. And
Yeah, great. Well, we'll jump off to a break. And then when we come back, we'll continue this discussion. It's been really cool so far. And what we'll do is we'll tap into a little bit more about motorsport heroes and I guess from your side, Seb, the racing culture behind what you're finding, the differences in Australia and also in Italy as well.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Welcome back to Negative Camber. Seb, tell us a little bit more about the quality of racing, say, in Europe compared to what you've faced here in Australia.
Well, first of all, if you try to pass them and you're alongside them, they'll swerve into the side of you and try to drive you off track. Or if they're behind you, they won't try and pass, they'll just run into the back of you and try and spin you. And That's something that I experienced a lot when I first started, but now I'm starting to get a bit more assertive and I'm working on it.
Yeah, wow. And here we are critical of driver standards here in Australia, Lee. And then you hear that.
It's on another level. And it's funny because at the beginning of the year, the team would tell him, someone would swerve and hit him and try to run him off the track. And he'd come in, and the first thing they would say to him is that whatever the kid's name was, let's say John, for example, next practice session, John, he's not finishing the session. You are putting him into the wall. That's what they would tell you. And so we're thinking, well, if they're saying that to Seb, that's probably what's being said to the other 130 drivers.
Yeah.
And so, but because I guess he was a bit of an unknown and they didn't know him, they didn't really respect him, and so they would just barge their way through. But it's sort of got a bit better now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You make some friends and stuff too. So that's good.
What sort of things have you had to do to earn that respect on track as well? Like your dad was just saying, you might have had to dish a little bit back, but have you had to find your own driving increase in aggressiveness since moving over to Italy?
Well, I'm not like them, how I'm like over the top crazy, but in practices, I give elbows out a little bit. So in the races, they respect me and we don't come together.
That's super cool.
I guess the thing is the point that the team would say to me, we'd come in, and because when we were at home, it was our own go-kart. We had one go-kart. If we broke it, we didn't race. So we always learnt that we drive, we clean, you give racing room. Whereas over there, he'd come in and the kart was immaculate, and they're like, why are there no tyre marks on the side of the car? They're like, we got 100 stickers up there. We want to change them every session. You need to rub. And I guess the thing was that he'd pull up next to them and they would swerve at him. And so he'd be like, oh, and he would back out. Whereas what you've learned now is...
like just to stay in there. And if they do that, you kind of go back into them.
Swerve back at them, I guess.
Keep them on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow, that's really conflicting. Like here we are trying to preach clean, tactical motorsport, and over there it's completely the opposite. And
it's really bad in the minis, like because in the minis over there, depending on the track, the toe is very strong. So
at summer,
even like at Lenato, how was it, about 4 or 5 tenths a lap you gain by being in tow. At Sano, which is massive long straight, it's almost like 8 or 9 tenths.
Maybe a second.
So it's really difficult to pass and go. And also because of the level of grip, if you dive inside and pass, you almost disadvantage yourself because the car just bogs and doesn't accelerate. So
it goes on 2 wheels and you're likely to flip.
So in the mini class, what they've learned is that if you don't compromise the other driver, then you don't get the pass stunt, and instead the 3 people behind you pass you down that next straight. So
and then push you off track.
Yeah. So whereas in juniors and senior classes, because they've got a lot more horsepower and the toe isn't as strong, they actually race a lot better.
But it's nowhere near it's a lot more messy in juniors than minis.
Because there's younger kids there that still, drive like they drive in minis, but they got a lot more horsepower.
And speed, yeah.
Yep. What are the field sizes like over there? I mean, at the moment we've seen unprecedented numbers at say AKC, in particular with the junior classes, or in many cases across all of them. What's it like over there?
For the minis, since I'm in under 10, there's about 40, 45 of them.
Depends on the track though.
Yeah.
50, about 50 odd.
Yeah. And in one race, most of the tracks have a capacity of 36 drivers.
But I think that under that, how they've split them this year is the first year they've actually got under 10s and 11 to 13, because at the end of last year it was like 100.
It was over 100.
It was like Rock, it was over 100, but in the Mini it was like 127 or something.
Yeah.
So that's why they've brought this where they've split them into 2 groups now based on age.
Yeah. Are you guys focusing most of your racing in Italy, or are you jumping across to other countries at the minute?
For minis, you can only race in Italy.
Well, there's different places, but because with Tony Kart, they specifically race the WSK and the races that are linked to ACI, which is like their equivalent of AKC for Italy. Yep. So that's what we are. But there are other things like Rock, and there's other things like IAMI series. But Tony Kart don't want their drivers racing in Ionic, obviously, because it's a different engine class, a different engine brand.
Manufacturer, yeah.
And then with Rock stuff, because they're the producers of Rock, they don't want their drivers driving in Rock because there's cheating or there's favoritism and things like that. So they race in WSK, in the minis anyway, and the ACI because it's an independent group, and they can race their Vortex engines in it.
Yeah, that's kind of really, really cool to hear that, because you would have thought they would have wanted their drivers racing in everything at the top level, trying to sell go-karts and engines.
But I think once they move up to OKJ, which is a junior class, then they race all over Europe.
Yep.
This may sound like a silly question because for me, I'm learning a lot about what you're saying in terms of the European class. But are the engine categories and the actual classes themselves different to here in Australia in terms of, say, technical specs or anything of that nature, or is it all the same, just different names?
They are different. So they run, so for the minis, they got, it's GR3, which is a mini class, and whether you're under 10 or 11 to 13, it's same weight, same engine, everything's the same. Whereas here they got 9 and 12 with the restrictors and the different weights. And then
also in the minis, we have the flaps on the side.
Yes, and the mini engine. So in Australia, we run the Rock engine, whereas over there they run the mini engine, and there's Mini 60 engine where there's 4 different engine brands. And so, like there's the factory teams, and Tony Kart's the only one that produces its own chassis and its own engine, the Vortex engine. And then there's other factory teams like CRG, Energy, Paralym. They build their chassis and then they get engines from the other 3 manufacturers. And the funny thing is, what we noticed at the end of last year was that in the GR3s, out of 123 drivers, there were only there was 3 in the third one. There was only 3 drivers out of 123 that had the Vortex engine, and they were the Tony Kart drivers.
Oh wow!
About 70% of them were Iami, and then
20 TM, and then
a handful of, what's the other brand? LKE. So. And then you have your private manufacturers, like private teams like Baby Race or Kiddix, which are like a private team, and they then sort of like for example, like Tom Williamson here, for example, right? Then they decide that they want to use this brand of chassis for this class because that's the best one, and then they want to use that brand of engine for this class because that's the best one. And so that's sort of the mini class, and then that kind of flows on into all the other classes. But they've got mini, OKJ, which is equivalent to KA2, but they're faster. And then they got OK, which is like a senior class for.
So the X30.
It's like a senior class, and then they got the KZs and KZ2. So that's really, they got 5 classes really.
Wow. And in terms of setup, I'd imagine it would be almost like bigger and better than AKC top level again.
It's like the Tony Kart team. You rock up. Well, I think the Tony Kart team kind of get the special spot in the paddock because their tents are always set up right near the pit entry and pit exit.
Yeah.
But like you rock up, so there's 20 drivers in Tony Kart across the 4 or 5 categories.
Yeah.
Each driver has 2 karts set up ready to go.
1 wet, 1 dry.
And then there's about 3 or 4 spare chassis sitting in the truck. And then each driver has about 8 to 10 engines. And then, so they got these massive, like, with the Patrizzi truck.
Yep.
It's like the Patrizzi truck with a massive tent that comes off it. And then Tony Kart, if they have at the WSK, if they have the whole team there,
3 or 4.
There'll be 3 or 4 trucks with that tent. And then there's a separate truck a bit further away, which is the catering truck, which is just the same size truck, but it's a kitchen. And so these guys that rock up for a race weekend, it's like the race weekend is Wednesday, Thursday practice, Friday morning practice, afternoon qualifying,
Saturday race, and Sunday
final. So 5 days, they rock up. And then the first thing, once you've said hello to the team, you go to the catering tent, you get your menu for the 5 days, and you write down everything you want, like you tick for breakfast, lunch, dinner, day. You submit that, and then in the day you rock up, they go, "Oh, Seb's here." They prepare his meal and give it to him. it's like something we're not used to. It's
There you go, Lee. You're setting up your pro karts team eventually. That's something for you to aspire to. That'll knock everyone's socks off here in Australia.
What you got to do, there's a few people there that are like, we think that, like, when you go to racing here, you think people are very wealthy. Over there, again, it's like on another planet. Like people rock up, because Seb's friends with a few on Instagram. They rock up to Milan airport in their own private jet. They get into their private helicopter and fly from the airport to the racetrack. And then they have someone who's brought in their motorhome. And we're talking about it's imagine
like the literal Tony Kart.
It's got extendable bits and things. And then
just about to comment on what's your how big are the motorhomes that you've seen? Because I did 2 rounds where I went to the World Championships, and that one thing that blew me away was the level of the motorhomes. They're just on a separate level, like nothing you've ever seen before.
But did you like when they drive the Ferrari California out and park it next to it?
Yeah.
And then they only use the motorhome for the day's racing. That they get in the car and go to the hotel at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then Seven Keller there in the little 10-year-old Lancia having the Vegemite sandwiches.
Keep it real.
But yeah,
nothing wrong with a Lancia. That's cool. I like that. When did you go over Europe to for the World Championship stuff, Lee?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think it was like 2014, 2015. We went to France, we went to SA, and then the year after that, the Worlds were at La Conca. So that'll be a track that you guys are familiar with. But we went to the World Championships at La Conca in KF. It was at that stage, which is the equivalent of OK now.
Yeah. When they raced at La Conca, what was the problem with the GR3s in the final? Every time they came around the last corner,
they would go so slow that the back markers and even midfielders would get stuck in all the grip.
It was like about an inch of rubber.
Yeah.
And they had to have like 3 restarts because they were all stuck. They couldn't actually physically go. Go out of the cars, move the cars, or get back in.
Also having, like, the marshals before races were having to dig the rubber off the track.
Yeah.
That's something that I've never experienced in Australia. People talk about grip in Australia. It's like over there, you grip and go around a corner. You have to, you almost get in 2 wheels and roll almost. You have to.
Yeah. And the rubber is built up so high that you've got to kind of use it like a berm, because if you straddle over the top of it, it's higher than the bottoming out point of the chassis. So the chassis understeers on you, you lose your steering and all that sort of stuff as well. But it's super funny when you come into the in-grid, you've got to keep the wheels turning so that they don't stick to the in-grid as well.
Yeah. No, it's all a different experience, because you said you'd come in and underneath the Mini was all just rubber.
Yeah.
Has that been one of the biggest challenges to get used to, besides the driving style and everyone being aggressive, just like that extra level of grip and how much more corner speed you can carry?
Well, yes, but you actually can't carry much more corner speed. You actually got to go slower, because if you try and carry much more speed in, you'll come in, but then when you hit the rubber, you'll just slide or you just get stuck in it.
Yeah.
And so you kind of got to go slower, but then hit every curb to try and stay on the inside of it.
You almost have to straddle the curb and get the outside tyre between the 2 rubber marks for the Minis, because they've got no horsepower. But I think the thing that you've struggled with the most is that Seb's style of driving has always been almost like a MotoGP bike. You like a lot of front end. He sort of almost comes in before the apex. The car's already rotated and it's in a slide, in a controlled slide. And so he's already on full throttle before the apex of the corner, cuts the apex and goes. And so you can't really do that there, because
you got to get it. You got to come in, brake, turn, and go.
So that's been a bit of a thing that we kind of struggled off at the start too.
I just can't get my head around that whole rubber thing. I mean, here we are. You speak to people here. Mind you, my racing experience in terms of karting is limited to SA only, and so any ounce of grip that appears, everyone like, oh my god, it's gripped up. But that just sounds insane.
Yeah, you can at Leonardo, you can go for a track walk in after the first 2 or 3 days when the rubber's built up.
And your shoes will stick.
Your shoes will stick to the track. So if your laces aren't tight, you walk and your foot will come out of your shoe. But
I reckon I've only ever had that sensation once, Lee, and that was when they just resurfaced Bolivar. And I think or no, they were about to resurface Bolivar, and they'd had City of Adelaide, and it was just before it was just after AKC, and it was rubber everywhere, and
not even close.
And
not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close.
That's what I mean. That's the only thing I can relate it to. But then you hear that, and it's just 10 times worse.
When with Bolivar gripped up like you're talking about, these guys are probably thinking about putting wets on because it's still so slippery.
I was going to say, yeah, but I can't fathom it. It's just it's incredible. Yeah. Wow.
The other thing, I guess, for us is Seb's young, but he's quite tall. Like compared to a lot of the other drivers, they come up to like about here on him.
Yeah.
So that's something that the team really struggled with at the beginning, because as soon as it gripped up a little bit, we'd start the weekend, we were half a second quicker than everyone.
Especially when it's cold in the morning.
Yeah, but then...
And especially since I had a big seat because I'm really tall, and then they put one of the small seats from the little kid in the team, and we ran that in the group. And sure, it's better, but the chest guard that I'm wearing is over the top of the seat. And so
yeah.
But that's been sort of an issue where, again, the height just generates so much lateral grip. But credit to Tony Kart, I guess, again, being in a factory team, is that when he gets his chassis coming out to the racetrack, you know how the little plaque on the back of the carts have, rookie chassis number. On his ones, they say Seb Racing. So they've actually gone, like he'll go at the start of the year, he'll be testing different chassis with different tubings and things like that.
Yeah.
And then even now they bring like different stub axles, different hubs, different steering columns, and even Greyhound have made a one-off seat just for him to work with the chassis, just because they've been trying to compensate the height factor.
For all the people that are racing here back in Australia and thinking of like joining factory teams or whatever, maybe following in your footsteps, what do you guys think has been the most important thing for Seb's development that you've got out of the factory team?
I guess learn for us has always been, because I've always been his mechanic. I guess the thing is to be able to be comfortable enough to let go and let other people have control. That's our dog just fighting.
Wants to join in on the interview.
And I guess to work hard, be focused on what you want to do, and just keep learning, I guess. That's the biggest thing. It's okay. She's all right.
Yeah, you're all good. We've had a topic of discussion of late in regards to frequency of attending the track and getting to the track in order to get faster. And I guess how often were you at the track when you were a little bit younger there, Seb? What was the frequency of you to get to the point? Because I mean, looking at your results, you'd almost hit the ground running straight away, like it was natural for you, even at the age of 4.
Well, we'll go to the track every weekend, but it didn't quite start off as well as it is going now.
Yeah. What were some of the challenges you were facing, or some of the issues?
Well, the same problem as Italy, since I'm one of the youngest and was one of the youngest, I wouldn't get respected as much as I do now.
Yep.
I guess,
sorry.
The thing is, for us, because we're not from motorsport, like when we bought a secondhand go, because when Seb he showed interest in the whole thing when he was 2. Like me being a motorsport fanatic, I had a simulator. And so from the time that he could start crawling, he'd crawl up on my lap. And then once that happened, I wasn't allowed to touch the steering wheel. He'd do this wheel and I would do the pedals.
Yep.
Actually, we got videos of it. He wasn't too bad. Like he could pick the lines. So we ended up setting up a little, in his high chair, a little simulator where he'd play on Gran Turismo. And he was so small that he couldn't see over the wheel. He'd have to look through the wheel. And then from that led to us going, let's try a go-kart. And we got a second-hand go-kart. But even trying to get someone to help us, it was always, no, it's too hard, this and that. So I ended up, like I said earlier before we spoke, I ended up just YouTubing it and Googling it. And I just bought some stuff off of eBay and just cobbled it together and went off to the car park. And then And the challenge, and because, like I said, my mindset has always been, if you're going to do something, you should do it properly, especially with driving. I think you develop bad habits.
Mm-hmm.
And what everyone used to say to us initially was, oh, he'll just get fast because he'll get confident. But it's like, yeah, but he needs to, I think for me, it's learn the good habits and learn the proper things so that you can work and learn those things rather than just get out there and be fast because you get confident and then you got to unlearn and then relearn. And I think the simulator has been really, really thin because he loves the simulator.
Yeah.
So,
Do you still play on the simulator now?
Yeah, I play every day.
Yeah. And have you got, like back home in Italy, do they have like a good kart simulator or is it just playing on racing car games?
So the factory don't have anything like that for us. There are places like Formula Medicine and things like that are very focused on sort of their fitness coaching, mindset coaching and simulation stuff for motorsport. But they have sort of focused on karters, but more so sort of Formula 4, Formula 3 kind of stuff. But we've got like a little makeshift portable sim that we took there. Again, because it's like, you might race 2 weeks in a row, but then you might not race for 2 weeks. And so it's not like when we were home, we'd have AKC, then we'd come home and we can go to the racetrack and practice the next weekend. You don't have that accessibility. So the simulator is the next best thing.
Yeah. I mean, for you, Kelly, obviously in Italy and stuff like that, how often are you staying there? Do you own the house? Are you renting it? Like, what's the living arrangements there?
No, we're renting. We had to get visas to go over, and so we needed to have a rental apartment. So, yeah. And
that was a bit of an experience too, the visas.
Not surprised.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we've got a little 2-bedroom apartment, which is actually really good. We're very lucky and so close to the track, and got to set up a little sim in there for Sebs and go from there.
And car rental is very expensive.
Oh yeah.
That's like enough. But we're quite lucky because one of the managers at Tony Kart lent us his car. We pay him a monthly thing, but it's like a quarter of what it would cost if you were to rent a car.
Yeah.
From Avis or equivalent.
Yeah.
Yep. And do you all fly over and stay in Italy, or is it just Kelly and Seb that go and you stay here and man the fort?
Initially, at the start of the year, we all went together just to sort of set up and get comfortable. Then obviously then someone's got to come back and pay for it. So it's not cheap.
No.
And that's probably like when you start motorsport, especially karting, everyone's got dreams and ideas that they want their kids to achieve. And they're all young, so they all want to race Formula 1. Formula 1 is the thing, right? Us, we've got this great opportunity that not many people have had before, but to go there and do what we're doing. But you don't actually think about all the things that come with it, like being separated.
All the logistics.
Yeah.
The emotional sort of support, the difficulty, like Kelly touched on earlier, that she was her own person. Like, so before she was a nurse, she was in the Navy for 10 years. So she's always been very independent, very goal-driven, had her own careers. And now it's like you almost stop that. You're full-time carer, teacher, like all these other roles that you never used to have before. And I guess even for them, like we love spending time together, and I'm sure he loves spending time with us. But when he's here, he goes to school 5 days a week. He's got that break from his parents. He's got an outlet. He's got a group of friends that he can do things with and talk about whatever they want to talk about. Now it's like that's non-existent. So I guess you've made some cool friends, and they actually race with each other on the sim.
Yeah.
So he's got friends from Sweden, from Belgium, and they're kids that have similar interests, and so they can relate and they're vicious on track. They'll put you in the wall the first second they get a chance. But then you come off and they're like, Seb, you want to go swimming? Let's go play tennis. Let's go kick the ball. It's quite cool that way.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different things that you wouldn't necessarily have thought about that are quite difficult, and makes it really tricky as a family to try to deal with, I think.
Yeah. What's the arrangement if you don't mind me asking, with Tony Kart, have they given, is it a year by year type of arrangement, or is it they've given you 4 years and then see how it goes? Or
we were kind of a nobody, an unknown, so they gave us a 12-month contract, but they're already talking about next year and about sort of what their plans are and what they want to do with him. And
Seb, I mean, it may sound like a silly question, but are you aiming for Formula One, or that's the goal?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I've got posters of Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, and me. And Senna.
Oh, now we're talking. Won me over. So see, Lewis, another Lewis supporter. Sure. Yeah.
The only good guy, or the only good driver he was missing was Max Verstappen off that wall.
Well, you should ask yourself, who's your all-time favourite driver?
Michael Schumacher.
Who's your favourite driver now?
Max Verstappen.
There you go.
So, you've got to pick 2 tracks, one from Australia and one from overseas. What are your favourite 2 tracks?
Bolivar here and I'd actually say Bulk Vibrata, the last track that we raced at.
What's special about that track?
It's just very similar to Australia, like all the hairpins, the chicane. Then it's kind of a tight, twisty and windy track. Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of the other tracks over there are much more fast and flowy, aren't they?
They're like, sometimes like Sarno, some parts of Sarno are like 12 metres wide.
Yeah.
And, as a mini driver in tow at Sarno, what speed are you hitting down the end of the straight?
118, 119.
Kilometres an hour wide. And look, we're talking back on the grip level. At Sarno, at 118 kilometres an hour at the end of the straight, by the end of the weekend, there is so much grip that they don't brake.
Yeah.
They just turn, dig, turn and go. It's just
crazy.
Yeah. So I guess whereas Val Vibrata is more similar to you because he was narrower. He was a bit more technical, and he actually had to position the car to make the car rotate and do what he wanted to do rather than just foot to the floor and just go.
Yeah. With Tony Kart, it sounded like that they're clearly going out of their way to make sure that you're feeling comfortable, Seb. But do they get your feedback? I mean, or do they use the feedback of the drivers that then has a flow-on effect to the next chassis, for example, like the next 401 or for the next junior kart or something along those lines?
I think so, because they do a lot of development, a lot of the ancillary stuff, like I said, the hubs, the stub axle, even steering columns and things like that.
I wonder even steering.
And different steering wheels and different seats, and even the chassis themselves, they change them. They go through like different compounds and tubing. I don't really understand it very well, but they'll bring and be like, to me, it looks like the same thing, but they're like, oh no, these 3 chassis are all different. And you'd go out in a 20-minute session, you come do 10 minutes and then come in and jump straight into another chassis and go out.
And do 5 minutes and jump into
another one, and like that. Then they back to back the data and then get your feedback on what it did. So, and I'm assuming a lot of that information probably then flows on to developing the chassis down the track. Yep.
And do they, like, at the end of each session, do you have like an engineer or a mechanic where you just sit down and go through all the data and stuff like that, like a proper telemetry session?
Well, I've got a mechanic, but he's Italian, so he doesn't have a word that comes out of my mouth. But there's luckily a person that talks very good English, Gabrielle, and he's a telemetry dude. And so I'll go tell him my feedback. Then he comes over to my mechanic and the Alessandro, the engine person, and tells them everything. Then Lorenzo, the one that used to be my mechanic but now helps the whole team, he would come down and tell Roberto what to change on the car. And then I would go do my data with Gabrielle and he would tell me where I'm doing wrong. And sometimes he even compares me to the junior karts.
Yep. That's so Italian. Lorenzo, Gabriel. Oh, it just oozes Italian. It's great. I love it.
I tell you, you were telling me how there's one heat race where something happened, and then you guys came in, and all 4 of them were around the car, and it was very heated, right?
It was a disaster.
It was there's a lot of hand gestures, and then you asked them what they were talking about, and they were talking about tire pressures. So they're very particular, and they're very meticulous, and they're very dedicated, and they really put their hearts on the line. They win as a team, they lose as a team. And so that's the passion just flows onto everyone else. Do you know what I mean? Like you feel like you want to perform for them.
Yeah.
Like that's just
They feel like they try and get everything good, and so I can perform and do well.
Yeah. They care.
Yeah. That sounds cool. Do they give you? Looks like you got some pretty good swag there in terms of t-shirts and stuff. Do you get a nice bit of kit, like some obviously the race suit?
Oh, so one of those trucks. So they have like 3 or 4 trucks that are where the tents come off for the karts. One truck is for engines, and one truck is for karts. Another truck is for merchandise. And so these guys, as their drivers, like he'd go up and like, oh, my shoe is feeling a bit tight. They give him the next pair of shoes, size up. Here you go. Race suits, hats, it's amazing. 7
suits in a box for me, and they're all 10 centimeters up from each other.
Yeah.
But your initial kit that when you joined the team was a big gear bag with all the undergarments and balaclavas, the helmet, and
because they're
wet boots, dry boots, wet gloves, dry gloves.
Because they're sponsored by OMP and Arai. So everything is OMP, everything is Arai. Yeah.
Yep. And they don't like you to look dirty, do they? So there's
no, so like if you're doing 5 race series, there's 5 suits. So each race series, another suit. And it's like, and you come in and like I said, the car, if the sticker's got a mark on it, they either clean it or replace the whole sticker.
Wow. That's incredible. Do they have their own like little washing machine or something in, like, how, so some of the V8 supercar teams, for example, in their transporter, they've got like a portable front loader that they wash the suit and then they dry it. The same thing there, or no?
No. You'd take maybe you'd maybe take 2 or 3 suits with you to the weekend. Often leave a good clean one for the final because that's televised, and then you use the other ones for the practices and the heats.
Yep. That's amazing. I can't get over it. Like I love my swag, so I'd be in my element in the merchandise section of the truck. So yeah, but with like, do you have ambitions or do you have a desire to sort of come back to Australia, race a couple of rounds while you're here, and then go back to Italy again in like your sort of off season, or it's Italy, Europe, that's it? You're not worried about what happens here and down under anymore?
I guess we initially wanted to come and race a little bit here when we come back, but the advice we got from the team and a few other people was that because the grip is the conditions are so different, that it changes a little bit away how you drive. But also you kind of feel like if you're here, you got a bit of a target on you, and everyone that gets on track with you has a point to prove. And so the team were like, we don't want him to get injured because someone's trying to prove a point. Whereas I guess over there you're doing what's expected of you, and everyone's there doing their thing. There's no I guess egos or anything like that. Everyone's just there doing their thing. And like I said, everyone knows what to expect from everyone else on track. And then once you come off track, it's like forgotten about and you move on. So he would have liked to have come and race. We were actually thinking of doing the City of Melbourne titles that just went by. But again, it was like advice from a few people, and the team was that they said they wanted him to be in the kart, but they just wanted to keep it quiet, like keep it low key.
Yeah.
And we feel like obligated to, I guess, listen to their advice and do what they sort of request. So.
Yeah. And you're talking about their special chassis with the, your name on the back of it. Are you going to purchase one of them and bring it back home and hang it up on the wall for each year level that he goes up?
Would like to. That'd be pretty cool. But when you won, so you won the Rock No, not the Lots, the Mini Super Cup Championship. That was Tony Kart's first championship for Mini in 15 years.
Yeah. Trophy.
And so it was like, it's funny because the race was on the Saturday, and on the Sunday, all the Mini team, mechanics, engineers were all out at lunch, and they sent Kelly a photo of them all saying cheers to Seb. So they were super pumped.
And then when we went to Sarno the next race, I had my trophy and I gave it to Alessandra, the engine person. But I said at the end of the year, you have to hang my card up with the engine and the trophy.
So, yeah. So we'd like to get one of those cards at some point, but my God, I don't know how much it would cost to transport it back. So,
yeah, especially with the current freight prices and all that sort of jazz, it's not a cheap exercise.
I had to send them their schoolwork. It was like 11 kilos in the box. If I was going to send them with DHL, it was like $680.
What?
I know. And then I sent it with Australia Post. It was $250 something.
Yeah, wow.
Far out. With the schooling then, I mean, you'd still be obviously working under obviously whatever Queensland schooling, sort of guidelines and that type of thing. And are you just sort of emailing and...
Absolutely lucky enough that Seb was able to be enrolled into the Mount Isa School of the Air.
Yep.
Just through our local school, they had contact out there and they thankfully took him on, finding out that he was a good student. And so we've been working with them. We have an online lesson every week, and then the rest of it, we just submit our work through email.
Yep. And Seb, do you have, I mean, if let's say, and let's hope not, but let's say race driving doesn't get to where you want it to go at a top end level, do you have like have a plan B? Like, do you want to be a doctor, or you want to be an engineer, or?
I honestly don't have one. All my focus is on karting, but if it absolutely didn't pay the bills, I would love to be a swimmer.
Nothing wrong with that.
Michael Phelps.
Yeah. He forged a pretty good career. That's not so bad.
He's not competitive at all.
Nah, not at all.
Nah.
That's just, I'm being sarcastic, so you're very competitive.
Yeah. Could have picked anything else in the world, but you picked wanting to excel at swimming, another sport, very competitive.
But, are there a lot of girls racing overseas? Like, are you racing against females at all?
There's no girls in the under 10s. Are there any girls in the mini?
Oh,
in the GR3?
I think there's one. There's Hakkinen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hakkinen's daughter.
Maybe one or two.
There's a
Maybe
couple.
2 girls in the GR3s, but there's no in the under 10.
No, but there's a handful in the OKJ and OK. But touching on that, is the other surreal thing is I grew up watching people like Montoya, Hakkinen, Schumacher, and all these guys race. And then you're walking through the paddock, and then you see Montoya, and you have a chat to him. And then you had Mickey Hakkinen talk to you twice.
Yeah, he came up to me.
And had a chat.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And then so you're racing against his kids, you're racing against Verstappen's cousin, you're racing against Leclerc's cousin, you're racing against Harvick's kids. Like, it's just like you walk through the field and you're like, oh, that's so-and-so. And so it kind of, for us, makes us think, well, what are we doing here? Like,
yeah,
it's like you don't belong because these people have been in that sport and in that industry, and they're somebodies, and we're kind of like, I don't know, average Aussies just going over there to have fun and race.
I share that sentiment. When we went to the Worlds, it was the same thing. We had little Schumacher was there, and Giuliano Alesi was in one of the fields, and it's like, what are we doing here? We're just a couple of kids from Australia. Like, I think I was just barely into my 20s by then as well, and I was like, wow, this is absolutely unreal.
Who were you there with, Lee? Who'd you go up with? Josh
Tynan.
Oh, right, okay. Yep. We found it interesting. I find that interesting because obviously with the Lana episode, and she talked about the challenges that they've actually faced, not only for herself, but as the family in terms of that whole boy versus girl type rivalry. And it clearly not existing because there's not very many females racing in Europe at all, you know, and that kind of it's a little bit sad in a way, because as the show, we advocate women in motorsport, but clearly at the grassroots level, which clearly doesn't sound grassroots in some cases, there's still a massive, massive gulf that they've got to try and overcome.
Yeah. No, very much so. But I find it interesting because you kind of think when it comes to motorsport, it's mostly equipment related. And so it's like maybe it's they don't have the interest, or whether it's they have been introduced to it. I think we do a lot in Australia to promote it. And it's not really maybe in Italy or the WSK and stuff, maybe it isn't sort of promoted as much.
Yeah.
Because I guess with the WSK, it's like sort of the elite level of what you can do it at. And so whether it's different in sort of in the basic Italian karting community.
The FIA that promote women.
The FIA, yeah. So there's stuff like that. So there's stuff for the older girls,
yeah.
I think, when in the OKJs and OK, because they got that, the girls, what's it called?
Academy.
Yeah.
The Women's Academy, something like that.
Yeah.
FIA Academy, something.
But not the younger.
Yeah. For some reason, not so much in the younger, sort of the under 13 age group.
Whether it's just a country thing or.
Yeah. It's an amazing journey so far, and it's been really cool to sort of see it from the sidelines. I mean, in the last 2.5 years, when we've been reading out the karting results on a national scale, when we do a review of the AKC, Eskandari-Marandi gets read out a lot. So we're very aware of your capabilities, and and from my side of it, I wish you nothing but the best, my friend. I reckon, by the sounds of it, you've got a massive career ahead of you wherever it takes you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're off. We are done for another episode of Negative Canberra. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board. And, hey, maybe we get you back.
Thank you.
No worries. Anything else you want to ask Lee before we wrap up?
No, I'm all good. It's just, wish you all the best of luck for the rest of the year, and look forward to seeing what you can do with the Tony Kart team in the future as well. And hope it's just the beginning of a long and fruitful career with them, and bring home another world championship for Australia with the Tony Kart team.
Thank you.
No worries. See you guys.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
You've reached the checkered flag of another episode of Negative Camber, the Motorsport Show. A huge thank you to you, our incredible listeners. Your support and passion for motorsports fuels our enthusiasm to bring you the latest results, analysis, and interviews from the racing world. Keep that FOMO at bay by subscribing to Negative Camber on your favourite podcast platform. We'd also love it if you could leave us a review and share the show with fellow racing enthusiasts. Your feedback and support mean the world to us. Remember, Negative Camber is more than just a podcast. We're a community of dedicated fans who live and breathe motorsports. Follow us on socials, join us on our website, negativecamber.co, and be sure to subscribe to the Negative Camber Club for access to exclusive content, episode previews, and special deals from our amazing partners. A huge thank you goes out to our podium partners and our incredible sponsors. Your partnership allows us to continue bringing you this show and dive deeper into the world of motorsports. If your business adds value to the motorsport community, get in touch with us to become a Negative Camber partner. So until next time, stay fueled with passion, embrace the Negative Camber, and keep chasing those podium finishes.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.